Hey guys, so today I'm just gonna check my understanding um, of the ideas in my economics class, and yeah, we're doing like trades between like two people and then two goods. So let's just create an example. So let's say Cyprian um, can produce um, 10 bikes per hour, and or let's say 20 watches per hour, and then Pam can produce, let's say, 5 bikes per hour or 20 watches per hour. So we have to first check the opportunity cost of each person. So per hour, Cyprian can make 10 bikes. So 10 bikes and then 20 watches per hour. The opportunity cost, so the opportunity cost, this is for Cyprian. So the opportunity cost of one bike is 2 watches. Is that true? So one bike is 2 watches. So it can make 10 bikes. So 10 bikes or 20 watches. So one bike or 2 watches. Okay, that makes sense. And then for Tam, opportunity cost is of one bike is 4 watches. So for one bike, he could have made for every bike, like at a certain time. If he makes one bike, that's equivalent to 4 watches. Okay, so we have to think which of these two individuals have a comparative advantage. Okay, so wait, what is comparative advantage? So I think it's the advantage of producing a certain product. So like, who has an advantage of producing that thing? So in this case, Cyprian would have an advantage in producing bikes. So the reason for that is that I think this is how I understand it. So one bike if they produce one bike, so in, let's say, a certain amount of time, whatever it takes to produce one bike, Cyprian could only produce 2 watches at that time, while Tam could have produced 4 watches at that time to produce one bike. So the opportunity cost is lesser for Cyprian than Tam. So in this case, Cyprian would have comparative advantage in producing bikes, because in Tam's case, he's gonna lose more watches if Cyprian and Tam both produce bikes. Tam would lose 4 watches, but Cyprian would only use 2. So Cyprian would benefit if has a Cyprian has a comparative advantage in producing bikes than Tam, right? I think that makes sense. So yeah, if they have a trade, then it would be ideal. No, it would only make sense if Cyprian is the one producing bikes. So if we take a look at the other way around, so if we look at the opportunity cost of one watch, so let's say this is for Cyprian, the case for Cyprian, the opportunity of one watch is, what is the opportunity one watch? It's basically, so like it took him, so to make one bike, it's 2 watches. So if he only produce one bike, he can only produce so 1/2 bike, right? Yeah, so 1/2 bike. So 1/2 bike. Does it make sense? Yeah, okay. And for Tam, the opportunity cost of one watch is this. So the opportunity cost would be 1/4 bike, because if there's only, if it does it like the same amount of time, so 1/4, so like so if you divide this by 4, so to get 1 watch is 1/4 a bike, so you can produce 1/4 of a bike only. So in this scenario, Tam would have a comparative advantage in producing watches. Okay, so why is that? It's because if you look at the opportunity cost, so with Cyprian it would cost him 1/2 a bike, and 1/2 a bike is larger than 1/4 a bike. So so Cyprian has a higher opportunity cost to be making watches, so he wouldn't go that way. So it's best for Tam to make the watches. I don't know if it makes sense. So if they're gonna trade, so what's gonna happen is that Cyprian will trade for we'll trade his bikes in exchange for Tam's watches. Okay, so what else do we have here? Okay, so we can also ask like in terms of watches, how much will Cyprian trade for one bike? So in terms of watches, how much will Cyprian trade for one bike? So let's say one bike. So Cyprian, how much will Cyprian trade for one bike? Okay, so it should be between 2 and 4 watches. So how much will Cyprian trade for one bike? So the trade price should be between for one bike, I think it's best to one bike should be between 2 to 4 watches. Okay, let's see, like, why is this the case? Wait, why is this the case? Okay. So they should let's say so the idea is the trade price should be between 4 watches. So let's say they trade at 3 watches per bike. So this one makes sense because let's say so we have Tam giving 3 watches to Cyprian for one bike. Okay, so he's giving 3 watches for one bike. Okay, so if we look at the scenario before they're trading, okay, so I think it's this one right here. So this is before trading, and then this is after trading. Okay, so 3 watches for giving 3 watches to Cyprian for one bike. Giving 3 watches to Cyprian for one bike. Okay, actually this one as well is that to Cyprian for one bike. So if Tam gives 3 watches to Cyprian for one bike, okay, and then so this is after the trade. This is after the trade, right? But what happened before the trade? So let's see, before the trade. So how much, if we look at without trading, Cyprian's scenario. So for Cyprian, for one bike, he can only make 2 watches. So 4 trades and Cyprian scenario, for 2 watches, he can only produce 1 bike. But with trade, Cyprian basically got an extra watch because he receives 3 watch. So 3 minus 2, so basically Cyprian gets 1 extra watch from the trade. Okay, now let's look at Tam's scenario. So this is Cyprian's scenario, and then we go Tam's scenario. Okay, so before, so let's start with after the trade. What happened to the trade? So basically Cyprian gives out 1 bike for 3 watches. For 3 watches. Okay, so if you look at the same amount of time, and here, let's say in this scenario, Tam, so for so the amount it takes to create 1 watch, he can only produce half a bike, right? Half a bike, like a quarter of a bike. Okay, so before trade, so after trade, so basically what's happening here in terms of watches, so basically Tam receives basically 1/3 of a bike for 1 watch that he gives. So 1/3 of a bike. So this 1/3 of a bike, if we compare it to before, so the opportunity cost, so in 1 watch, so yeah, so like in producing just 1 watch, he can only get a quarter of bike, right? But with this one, Tam could receive 1/3 of a bike, and that's better than 1/4 of a bike. But yeah, but basically what this means, yeah, basically for 3 watch you can get a bike. It's better than before, where for 4 watch he can get a bike. So basically, another way of saying this is opportunity cost of 4 watches is 1 bike. So basically, another way of saying this thing is that we can say Tam receives 3 bikes for receives 1 bike for 3 watches that he gives, and this scenario is better than this scenario right here, because he was in 4 watches he can only get 1 bike, but here it's better for him because in 3 watches he can get 1 bike. So yeah, so I think they should trade. Yeah, I think what they're saying, like the idea here is they should trade between in terms of watches, between 2 to 4 watches. I think that's the idea here. Okay.